get going. I'm Philip Jackson, and I'm here to talk about PCI compliance, and it is a terribly boring subject, so I apologize. It's also right before lunch. Sorry again. So I won't stand in front of you and food. In fact, I'll be the first one out the door. I am Phil Winkle on Twitter, also Phil Winkle on GitHub, Phil Winkle pretty much everywhere else if you want to hack me. I am very active in the Magento community. As Kaylin said, I have 4 Magento certifications. I've been doing Magento since the preview hit IRC back in the Zen channel back in 2007, like in December of 2007. So very few people have been doing it that long. I'm very passionate about Magento. I also like to give back to the community. Kaylin and I run a Magento podcast called Mage Talk, and you should go check it out right now, magetalk.com. We are recording live here all week, and so we would love to get, Kaylin's got the microphone right there, and we would love to hear what you guys have to say about Magento. Maybe you don't know a whole lot about Magento. That's actually a conversation I'd love to have. So let's talk about PCI compliance. Who knows what PCI compliance is? Just a few people. Okay, that's okay. PCI, what does PCI stand for? It's Payment Card Holder Industry. And there's a set of standards that all of the major credit card companies have come together and decided are a group of standards that make a secure implementation possible for people who accept credit cards. And this is not just for online e-commerce, okay? PCI can extend for retail operations as well, people that work in call centers that encounter credit card numbers on a daily basis. So PCI compliance is way more than just e-commerce, all right? There are a few myths about PCI that I think we should address right off the top. Number one, if I don't store credit cards, then PCI doesn't apply to me. That's false. It's very false. In fact, Focus on PCI, which is a PCI blog, actually says the only way to avoid PCI compliance entirely is to transfer the risk to somebody else other than yourself. So credit card information should never, ever even come close to being entered into your website. So the only way that you can avoid PCI compliance is for your business to not take credit cards. Whose business could not take a credit card and still exist? Okay, so it matters. Number 2, Magento is PCI compliant, so therefore I'm PCI compliant. Who believes that Magento is PCI compliant? Not a single hand. Okay, cool. False. Kind of. Magento actually itself, out of the box, is not PCI compliant. Now they will tell you Magento is PCI DSS compliant, and it's true, but it's only PCI DSS compliant when used in conjunction with another product that they have called Payment Bridge. Payment Bridge is a technology that is very rarely touched or changed, if ever. That is basically an iframe solution so that the payment doesn't happen on your computer. But here's the kicker. The Payment Bridge application is also, even though that application is PCI compliant, you still have to maintain a PCI compliant environment for it to run in. So it doesn't exonerate you totally of the responsibility, okay? So why isn't Magento itself fully PCI compliant, where I can take a credit card through Magento, 5-minute setup, and I don't have to worry about anything else ever? Well, number one, Magento is monolithic. Who's ever worked with Magento, if you're a developer, you understand that the breadth and the scope of Magento is absolutely huge. And people working on features that have nothing to do with credit cards actually impact the PCI compliance of Magento. PCI says that every time something changes in the code, you necessitate a full audit before that code can be published back out to your consumers. So that is a very expensive proposition. So for them to get updates out the door quickly, like this 6788, right? For everyone to get those types of updates really quick, the best way to do that is to remove the PCI compliant portion from the payment platform from the actual e-commerce platform itself. So it limits the scope of their impact. Myth number 3, I'm in the EU, Australia, Antarctica, and I don't need to abide by PCI because there is no governing body that will enforce it. Sorry, that's also false. Why is that false? Because you can't unhack a hacked site, okay? If you don't have processes and procedures into place, when something happens, and it ultimately will, Something will happen that is out of your control that you never intended to happen, and you will try to piece it back together, and no matter how hard you try, you can't unhack the site that just got hacked, okay? So when you encounter credit card information or whenever you have a data breach, you have to have a set of policies and procedures in place of how to deal with those. That's really what PCI is about. Okay, how long, just to show, just a quick quiz of the audience, how long do you think it takes for a default Magento 1.9.0.0 put out live on the internet for all to see? How long does it take to get hacked? Anyone? 18 minutes. You always undershoot it. I don't know why you guys do that. But it's about 18 minutes. Now, if you were running the very latest and greatest, and you were running Magento 1.9.2, as of this morning, 0.2.2, right? If you're running that, it's probably, you probably won't have that problem at all. But the idea is there are things that, it's a constantly moving target. Staying up to date is a constant battle for all of us. And so it actually affects every one of us in a very real way, and we can't just stay, you can't stay safe forever without doing anything to protect yourself. Okay, so who has heard of Mage-Report? All right, that's 13 mentions of Mage-Report today. Keeping count. Mage-Report's great. We like Mage-Report a lot. This is the site that I launched 30 minutes ago that got hacked. 54.165.79.121. It had none of the patches installed, and it was hacked in 18 minutes. Very easily repeated. I'd love to do it for you later on. Common PCI failures. Okay, who here uses third-party modules? Who here uses the HeadWorks modules? Oh, where'd he go? If you use a third-party module, your PCI compliance burden has just gone much higher than just using Magento itself. Do you use source control for deployments? Okay, so you need to go straight right now. Don't hesitate. Stop listening to my talk and go visit yoursite.com/.git and see if you have an unprotected Git directory, because that also affects your PCI compliance if you deploy from source control. What happens if an employee takes a credit card over the phone? Do you have a written down procedure of what they're supposed to do? Anybody? No. Okay, so you should. Do you have Wi-Fi at your office? Do you have Wi-Fi? Wi-Fi? ¿Tienes Wi-Fi? Dos Wi-Fis? So Wi-Fi actually increases your PCI compliance burden dramatically. You're supposed to get that penetration tested every 3 months. And in the United States, that costs about $8,000. So just to have Wi-Fi in your office is about a $32,000 a year expense. That's crazy, right? When was your last security scan? Not Mage-Report. When was the last time that you brought in a third-party company to audit your security situation? If you want to hear a little bit more about security, there's a talk later on today. Talesh Siparsan, who is an amazing Magento developer, and he can tell you a little bit more about what you can do to up your security game. But if you don't know when your last security scan was, it's too long ago. What is your log retention policy, right? And do you store all of the logs that happen on your web server somewhere else, and how long do you keep them for, okay? If you don't know, you should. If you're in IT, you should absolutely know that. This is a requirement of PCI even at the lowest degree. And I've been asked this question a lot. Why is this a requirement? Because when something goes wrong, you have to be able to do some digging to find out how the hack occurred, how bad the hack was, like what kind of data was accessed, and you want to be able to help analysts out in that respect, because who knows what else they'll find when they start digging. Okay. What's your password policy? Anybody? Does anyone know what their password policy is? Yeah, correct horse battery staple. Okay. So your password policy is probably ever changing. 4 or 5 years ago, an 8-character password was probably fine, or most people thought it was fine. It probably wasn't fine, but it's ever changing. Now we're seeing much more complex passwords that are starting to evolve, and our understanding of what a secure password is evolving. You're supposed to rotate at minimum passwords every 90 days. Who does that regularly? Who still has the same Gmail password for the last 5 years? Okay, there you go. All right, what do you do in case of a data breach? Do you have that written down? What is your backup strategy, and have you tested it? That's important. You may be backing stuff up. Have you ever done a fire drill to try to recover from a backup? You should probably schedule that. That's an important thing to do. Do you have a staging environment? Who has a staging environment where you put changes before they go live to production? Yeah, nice. Do you have a separate development environment from your staging environment? Hands? Yeah? How about this? Do you copy live customer data to your staging and your development environments? Okay, don't do that. All right, so how do you get compliant? This is the boring part. This is the part that is like, people make a ridiculous amount of money just consulting for this. So I'm going to give you the quick, convenient 12-step program. You know what a 12-step program is for recovery, right? Okay, so we've got a 12-step program. So step one, you want to maintain and build a secure network. So the first step is to install a firewall, but not just install your firewall, maintain your firewall. Who has a written down procedure that you follow when somebody gets fired or let go from your company, that you go check to make sure they don't have access to the firewall anymore? 2 people in this room. 3. Okay. All right. So maintain your firewall. Number 2, do not use vendor-supplied defaults. That includes your local network in your office where you access Magento. Okay? Can you think just for, does your NAS that you store stuff on, does that have a default password? Okay? How about, have you gone around, and if you do Wi-Fi in your office, have you gone around and checked to make sure that nobody brought an airport device from their house and just plugged it in? Because that's happened to me, all right? So you want to make sure that vendor-supplied defaults aren't available on any of your devices, and that means doing audits regularly. This is terrifying, isn't it? Cool. And why, guys, why are we even doing e-commerce? Let's go do something else. Protect cardholder data. Obviously, we want to protect stored cardholder data. According to PCI, cardholder data is the credit card number. So who's storing credit cards? Don't raise your hands. If you're storing cardholder data, you probably shouldn't be doing that. There's safe ways to do it. Go to any of the payment providers today. Will give you a tokenization solution, so you can give them a card number. That's what we were talking about in the beginning, transferring risk. You give them the credit card number, they give you a token back, you can reuse that token. According to PCI, that token is no longer considered part of cardholder data, mostly because it's multi-factor authentication. It requires your API key to be coming from your authenticated network, that if any of those factors change at any point in time, it may actually invalidate the hash that you have, so they can no longer use their stored credit card. How do I know? Because I did a site migration one time, and it broke all of the stored keys. It's pretty awesome. Very, very cool technology there. But besides protecting stored cardholder data, you want to encrypt the transmission of cardholder data in transit. So we understand these things. Who's using SSL? You know what this stuff is. So here's the key. Number 2, maintain a vulnerability management program. Who uses antivirus? Right? It's like, who needs antivirus if I'm not going to if I'm not just downloading stuff off of Napster? What is it these days? I don't know. I don't know. Whatever kids use these days. If you're not installing malicious software, then you shouldn't be impacted, right? Well, that's actually not true. Very recently, the Guru Site Inc. is a very good example of malicious software that was installed. That in particular was a JavaScript hack that may not have been caught by antivirus, but there's some other ones that happened a few months ago, in particular in conjunction with the shoplift hack that actually could have been caught if you were running ClamAV or something on your production machine. That sounds crazy, right? So it is kind of insane. An auditor who would come in after you've been hacked, examining your PCI compliance policies and procedures, would actually require you to run antivirus on your production hardware. I don't like this. I think it's a little over the top, but we don't live in a safe world, okay? So to develop secure systems, then we can't just be all smart enough to remember all this stuff all the time, okay? I'm not smart enough. Kaylin's certainly not smart enough. To develop those systems, and we have to have tools that remind us about it. There's a bunch of them. I'm not going to go into all of them. Mage Report's a great way to figure out if your Magento site's up to date. But how many of us are running WordPress, right, or Typo 3? How many of us have like intranets internal that can be accessed outside of your corporate network? That's all stuff that may have impact on your PCI, okay? And let's forget PCI. Forget the fact that we want to comply with some sort of regulatory standard. This is about protecting your customers' information, right? They have entrusted you with keeping them safe, and they put their trust in you to some degree, and we should all respect that enough to help them out. So there's some free Libre open source software tools that are available. RIPS for PHP is a great static code analysis tool. SQL Map will do SQL injection testing. This is if you're cheap and you don't want to pay for the pen test every 3 months. There's also an XSS, a cross-site scripting exploit framework that you can actually download and install. That's provided by OWASP, who is the company that publishes a bunch of security. Sorry. Hi, Kaylin. Take my picture. They take a bunch of security standards. If you've ever seen a CVE number, right? A CVE number, or who's ever installed a Magento patch and you see like AppSec, those numbers are internal tracking numbers for actually known vulnerabilities that are being exploited in the wild. OWASP has a lot to do with defining what those are. I'm going to keep moving quick so we can get to lunch. We want to implement strong access control measures. So the first part of that is restrict employee access to cardholder data. Who has a company of more than 30 employees? No? Okay, 4 or 5 of you. If you have a company of more than 30 employees, I guarantee at least 1 or 2 of them have access to your Magento admin that you don't even know about, okay? And the way that they do that sometimes is with shared accounts. That's number 2. Every single person has to have a unique ID to access your e-commerce platform. In fact, in theory, technically, every single person is supposed to have a unique access ID for anything. Access to your network, access to Active Directory, whatever it is that you use in your organization, every single person should have their own one. Who hosts with a third-party hosting provider like a Rackspace, Nexus, any of those? You have to tell them that you're trying to be PCI compliant, because otherwise they'll just create one user on the box called Rackspace, and they'll just log in with that. 7,000 people at Rackspace can all log in under the same account, and it all abides by the same principle, okay? So the third piece is actually one of the most difficult to get, is to restrict physical access. If you have servers inside your network at your office, depending on the amount of credit card transactions you do every year, you may actually have to install things like closed-circuit television cameras, a guest book with somebody that sits at the door to make sure that people are signed in before they come in the door. These are all terse requirements, and this is why I keep whenever people say, oh, I'm PCI compliant because I'm running PayPal, they don't realize the physical impact of the business, because at any moment, someone could pick up the phone and they could call someone in your organization and give them a credit card number over the phone, and all of a sudden PayPal doesn't make any difference whatsoever, okay? All right. So now we are going to start our intervention because we're feeling like we've now recognized we have a problem and we're trying to make amends, okay? So we want to start to monitor and test the networks. We're going to do that on a regular basis. So the first thing is that you want to monitor all access to network sources. That's pretty tough. And all cardholder data. And then you want to regularly test your security systems and processes. I've kind of covered why those are really tough. So we're getting help now. We want to maintain our information security policy, okay? And this is really, there's a document that you should have in your organization that lists job roles and responsibilities of who is allowed to access credit card numbers, okay? And guess what? If that person's not at work and none of those people are at work on the day that somebody needs to phone in a credit card number, you're not supposed to take the credit card. The person's job role and responsibility needs to be defined that they're supposed to come in contact with credit card information. I think this is personally ridiculous, but this is technically what you're supposed to do. That person is supposed to sign a form that says that they realize that what they're going to come in contact with on a daily basis is sensitive information, and they need to be informed and reminded of it 4 times a year of what they're supposed to do in case they do. Let's use that example that I just used a second ago of somebody that wants to call and buy something. They're having trouble accessing the site, and they want to buy something. They call your office, and they just give the credit card number over the phone to your call center rep. Did that person type it straight into the computer? Okay, that's one thing. Did they write it down first? What if the rep is having problems too? They want to help that person, place the order, they'll do it later, they write it down. Well, what happens to that Post-it note? Where did that go? Does that go in the garbage? Does it go in the shred? I found out the hard way, shredded documents are actually still considered cardholder data. You have to do something with the shreds that's more secure than just throwing it in the trash. So it actually gets kind of out of control. So you need to make sure that the people that come into contact with things that are considered sensitive information in your company know what to do with it when it happens. Now, believe it or not, at the end of all of this, there is freedom. You can actually you can break the PCI addiction. So I'll wrap it up. I'll say, listen, this stuff sounds really hard, and you can make it sound really tough. It is absolutely hard. Okay, there's no doubt about it, because it's supposed to be hard. Security is not supposed to be easy, right? If we all didn't have the same Gmail password for 5 years, right? That would be because it's actually easy to remember a new password, or it's easy to remember to even update or change those things on a 4-time-a-year basis. So we really need some things to help make it easier for us. So there's a few ways that we can do this in the Magento community in particular. There's a security stack exchange, which I recommend if you're a developer that you frequent. You will see a lot of misinformation, but I think just being exposed to the back and forth of what is the possibility of the risk that exists in the world and the people that are trying to do bad things is eye-opening. Also, the Magento Stack Exchange is really, really great for posting and finding information, especially about current events. Today, like 3 hours ago, somebody asked a question about how to cover something in the new 6788 patch that landed yesterday. And there was this really awesome, thoughtful approach with a tool that somebody wrote specifically for the answer to that question for them to run to fix a problem with the way that they're running the patch. So it's a great community. There's also the Magento subreddit. If you're on Reddit, check out our Magento. But I also would highly recommend the IRC channel for Magento, Magento Reddit, and Magento-Reddit. The ways you're supposed to actually keep up to date, because one of the requirements is that you stay up to date on this stuff, is to stay secure by subscribing to a few blogs or with an RSS reader. So you can get on the OWASP mailing list. Security.magento.com is a great place for you to get security information. You can sign up for an email list there to get notified when things come out. If the email that you get says, please don't share this information, could you please not share the information? You want to go with a managed host, because no one in this room, I love you all, I'm sure you're all brilliant people. There's a lot of people way smarter than I am in this room. No one in this room is smart enough to handle this all on their own, okay? It takes the power of a community to really tackle all this stuff all at once. And so you really want to go with a managed host, somebody who can kind of help you mitigate some of that risk, because it's what they do every day. Unless that's all you do, I don't really trust anybody with dealing with things like firewalls, VPN, all the type of things that Talesh will get into in his talk later on, but I don't really trust myself. I don't know that I know enough to handle this stuff well. So you want to take that responsibility and give it to someone else. And then lastly, you want to remind yourself of policies, things like password rotations. Now in Magento Enterprise, you can do this pretty easily, and you can actually set passwords to expire, but maybe not everybody's using Magento Enterprise. So easy ways to do it in your organization is just to set global calendar reminders for everybody to rotate passwords. Hey, here's another one. Just go in and just go delete everyone's password in the Magento database. That's how you enforce password security. Okay. You want to perform an assessment. You don't let it go too long. If you can't remember the last time that you did a security assessment, it's been too long. There's one way to start. This is by no means the be-all, end-all, but there's a Magento best practice scan that's available from ECG, the expert consulting group at Magento. It will tell you where there's a few things that are very common pitfalls. If you're using the super globals Git anywhere, you should be very scared, especially if they're in the template file. Anywhere that you see direct SQL in any module, doesn't matter what vendor it's from, you should be very, very scared. You can also run Mage Report. That's number 14. I've mentioned it. And it will tell you, they're actually so up to date on the new stuff that's come out. But again, this is only Magento specific. So I really suggest, just like I wouldn't leave hosting to my own devices, don't leave security up to your own devices either. These are just a few ways to get started. I really want to leave a couple minutes for questions. So thank you all so much. Thank you for listening to me talk. Appreciate it.